Good morning, everyone. I'm Ariana, and I, along with Mr. Johnson, have the pleasure of introducing Sadie before she shares her senior speech with us.
I couldn't be more honored that Sadie asked me to stand here this morning with Ariana and offer this introduction.
You may know Sadie as the leader of PCI or Asian Alliance. Maybe you know her as the varsity swim team co-captain, or maybe as the leader and co-founder of History Club, or the Boundaries and Sexual Empowerment Committee, or Students for Diversity and Equity and the Communications team. You may know her from Women's Ensemble, Packer Journal of History, or Juke Group. If none of these are ringing a bell, where have you been? Chances are you probably know Sadie from at least one or two of these spaces. I too know Sadie as the leader, community builder, and advocate that she is. But I also know her as the person who, without ever having met me, asked me to go to a pre-9th grade orientation breakfast at Clark's Diner. I know her as the person who is brave enough to speak about the story of her adoption, not only to her close friends, but to the whole Packer community. I know her as my subway buddy, as someone who invites my family over to share Rosh Hashanah dinner with hers, or who brings me a slice of past cake in from her Seder that she insists I have to try. I know her as the person who has helped make my high school experience what it is, as the person who has looked out for me and pushed me, supported me, and believed in me. I know her as a best friend. I hope you get to know her a bit better too after today.
And I know Sadie is that former student who, regardless of the fact that I haven't had the pleasure of teaching her since she was in my 8th grade English class, though those many years ago, never fails to remember my birthday. I owe my gluten-free rounding habit to her thoughtfulness. If you haven't tried one, you must. Or acknowledge me on National Teachers Day, and I probably wouldn't even know such a thing existed if not for her kindness. Teaching brings with it many gifts, one of the greatest of which is the opportunity to learn from my students. And let me tell you, it comes as no surprise to me that Sadie's dream is to become a teacher, as she's taught me some invaluable lessons over these past 5 years. And she's about to share one of these with you right now. I only wish she had been a student in my high school so that I could be hearing this speech as a teenager.
Please join us in welcoming Sadie Sadler to
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Johnson and Ariana, for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Mr. Johnson, for helping me write this speech. Packer can be a scary place. I've been here for 13 years, but you don't even need to have been here for that long to know that Packer can be full of judgment and cancel culture. It demands so much from you academically and socially. There's so much to navigate between classes and grades, social media, party culture, and the social hierarchy. And if you're introverted, female, chubby, and or Asian like me, all of this is even more difficult to navigate. With so much pressure put on both by yourself and those around you, it's easy to be quiet. It's easy to feel like being invisible is the best solution. At least that's what I defaulted to. I thought, if I just blend into the background, I'll never get hurt. I'll never embarrass myself, and I can protect myself by keeping an image of silent perfection. So I never spoke in class, afraid I would say the wrong thing and everyone would laugh at me. I never inserted myself into social situations, never went to parties, afraid I would make a fool of myself. I never went to the cafeteria because I was afraid of all the people there who could see me, so I used having too much homework and trying to lose weight as an excuse not to eat lunch. I did plenty of extracurriculars and clubs, but even in those, I was always a wallflower, a fly on the wall. I was scared of getting too close to people and exposing my flaws, so I kept everyone, even friends, and especially boys, at a distance. And at times, I found myself friendless and alone because of it. I don't know when all this started, but definitely by 4th grade, it had become a problem, and it continued throughout middle school and into the beginning of high school. And of course, it was not just because of Packer. It was an inherent part of me too. It was my nature. But Packer certainly didn't make it any easier for me to speak and assert myself, even when I wanted to. And in time, I really wanted to speak and assert myself, especially at the start of high school, where I could start fresh and rebuild my image, at least in the classroom setting. As I grew, there was so much more I wanted to say, so much more I wanted to do. But I was so used to being quiet, so used to that perfect image, so used to being invisible, that I could not break that barrier. It was ingrained in me, it was what I knew, and it was safe. I went to a therapist, saw the school psychologist, worked with my deans and my advisors, but I still could not break the habit. My voice was stuck inside of me. And eventually that barrier started eating at me. I'd feel so upset at myself when I went a whole class without saying a word, or when I wanted to join a conversation but I was too afraid. I would scold myself and yell at myself and beat myself up. There were even times I felt I couldn't handle the world because I knew I needed to speak, but I just couldn't. I was so focused on not getting hurt by others, I ended up hurting myself. So suddenly, in the library on April 17, 2019, a voice inside me says, "Do Poetry Chapel." A few days before, when someone made an announcement about auditions, I didn't even listen. I could never, and besides, everyone hates Poetry Chapel, and my social standing could drop even lower. But suddenly, as I sit in the library doing homework, I remember that announcement, and I think to myself, I'm done being the shy, quiet kid. I'm done with every comment on my report card being, "Sadie is a quiet student, and I'd love to hear more from her." I'm done regretting not inserting myself. I'm gonna take a leap of faith, go big or go home. Whether I completely embarrass myself or everyone just ignores me, I must do this and not worry about what others think. This is going to be the turning point. If I can do this, I can do anything. I'm going to audition for Poetry Chapel. Flash forward a week, it's almost community time, almost time for Poetry Chapel. I didn't eat lunch because I'm absolutely terrified. I feel like I'm going to throw up, yet I'm starving. I feel sick, I feel faint. Regret creeps into my mind. I try to push it away and hype myself up, but I can't get all the what-ifs out of my head. As I take a seat on the stage, my heart pounds rapidly. The pews fill with students, the walls line with teachers, and my body just shakes uncontrollably. I'm the second to last performance, so I have a long time of waiting. Then, the crowd dies down and the first student performs. Somehow, I begin to feel at ease. Although Poetry Chapel is supposedly resented, I can tell students and teachers are engaged, and with each round of applause after each performance, I gain confidence. I can do this. I've got this. When I step up to the podium, I can tell everyone is restless and ready for this to be done, but I ignore that fact and focus on myself. This is my moment. I have a voice, and I am going to use it. I let go of fear, I summon courage, and I speak. And immediately, I feel the barriers break. I feel myself overcoming the years of silence and invisibility. I finally change my narrative. I finally find my voice. And not only did this empowerment come from within, it also came from the community before me. Each cheer, each clap made me feel more and more supported. The eager faces listening to my words filled me with strength. As soon as I finished reading, I got a standing ovation and cheers and high fives. And when Poetry Chapel concluded, I was flooded with compliments and emails from old teachers saying they were so proud. I was beaming inside. I truly couldn't believe what I just accomplished. And with that, I realized that I should not be scared of my own presence. My voice has value and people will listen when I speak. I took a leap of faith and it had a huge payoff, bigger than I ever could have imagined. And then it hit me that Packer isn't so scary after all. All I had to do was just lean into my fears, not be afraid of them. After all, you never know until you try. And yes, the Packer community can be the toughest critic at times, but it can also be such an encouraging, accepting, and loving place. The Packer community, what I originally feared, turned out to be what gave me the boost of confidence I needed to overcome my limitations. So after this, I started to raise my hand more often and insert myself into more social settings. I began to share my thoughts, my opinions, my writing. I became more comfortable having eyes on me and hearing myself speak, even when I shared an opposing view or a personal story. Each day I went without beating myself up, each comment on my report card without Sadie should speak up more, each conversation I joined, each lunch I ate in the cafeteria was a reward that filled me with motivation to keep putting myself out there and keep using my voice. So then, with my newfound power, I took my voice beyond the small setting and into the larger community. And I did this not just for myself, not just because there was even more I wanted to say and do, but also to help others find and use their voice and to make a difference in my community. I began to be a leader by being a role model and taking initiative, and by using my voice for all sorts of activism and advocacy. Like raising my hand in class, I quickly learned that being a leader is also very rewarding. Leading gave me purpose and drive, and I felt so good when I was successful in making a positive impact, and when people in the community showed me they appreciated and valued my work. And not being afraid to be a leader also allowed me to further explore and engage with my interests and passions. Like in my freshman year, there was no club dedicated to history, and I really wished there was because I was, and still am, a total history nerd. So with the confidence I built by sophomore year, I founded the History Club. And so becoming a leader by feeling empowered just kept empowering me even more. It was like a self-empowerment cycle. And all the while, I did get things wrong and had moments of embarrassment, of failure, of regret, of tension in both big and small settings. Like one time in a class, I shared a political opinion and quickly learned it was an unpopular opinion as the rest of the class suddenly attacked me. And yeah, I took another big leap of faith one day and basically told the guy I liked that I thought he was attractive and cute and smart, which ended in nothing but embarrassment and regret. But the more this happened, the more I became used to it and realized nothing was ever as big of a deal as I thought it was, and that the point of life is to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to speak your truth, to focus on progress, not perfection. And let me be clear, my struggles in using my voice didn't suddenly disappear forever. To this day, I still struggle to speak in the classroom, and I still have immense stage fright. And I still feel awkward in social situations and have a hard time letting people see my flaws. I'm still working on all of it. But as I said before, I've learned to lean into those fears, not be afraid of them. As inaugural poet Amanda Gorman wrote in a New York Times article called Why I Almost Didn't Read My Poem at the Inauguration, quote, "Maybe being brave enough doesn't mean lessening my fear, but listening to it. Look at fear not as cowardice, but as a call forward," unquote. I still fear. I've just learned how to overcome that fear and not let that fear become an obstacle to showing my full self. And I'm also still a complete introvert. I get energy from being alone, and I'm still a generally quiet, calm, shy, reserved person. But as I've learned, introversion is not a bad thing. It's not something to be ashamed of or to overcome. You don't have to be the loudest person to have and use your voice, to show your full self, to make an impact on people and your community. And even more, there's power in being quiet. Sometimes being quiet actually means you have a lot of power when you speak, because people are more likely to listen and value what you have to say. And as Susan Cain writes in her book titled Quiet Power, introversion tends to come with other superpowers like listening ability and more empathy. So I'm not saying I became extroverted or that you must become extroverted. Introversion is actually something to celebrate and embrace. For me, it was the fear to speak, to make connections. That is what I needed to and did overcome, not my introversion. So you see, as Amanda Gorman also wrote, quote, "Do not fear your fear, own it, free it," unquote. Packer can be difficult and even hurtful at times, but Packer is also a really welcoming, compassionate, supportive, and caring place. And there will always be at least one student or teacher or adult, if not many, many more, who will show you love and affection. I am so lucky to be in this community that accepted my voice when I gained the strength to use it. So don't waste your time at Packer letting barriers prohibit you. Take the opportunities at this school to break down those barriers. Be imperfect, make mistakes. Let people see your flaws, let people in. I can tell you from experience, you don't want to wait so long to stop being afraid. So take big steps or take small steps, but take steps forward. Take that leap of faith, whatever that may mean for you. Raise your hand in that class, join that club or team, go to that party, tell that person how you feel, share that talent, step out, speak up, take risks, shoot your shot, have guts, lead. Don't be who you're not, but don't let fear stop you from being who you want to be. Find your voice, use your voice. Your voice matters. You matter. So let yourself shine. Thank you.